I've been wanting to make this video for a while, and it's really an attempt by me to process through some thoughts I've been having about dysphoria, the way that I used to manage through dysphoria, and then ultimately transition. And in short, I'm just asking myself a question of, what does it mean to be trans? If that's a question you've been asking yourself, or you might find value in finding the perspective of a trans person, stick around and let's get at it. Hi, my name is Kate Madden, and I live in Vancouver, BC, on unceded coastal Salish territory. I make videos really as in an effort to act as a resource in a way that I didn't feel like I had access to when I began my transition about 3 years ago. If you've liked my other videos, or this is maybe you're watching the second or third video, it would mean a lot to me if you could subscribe, like the video, leave a comment below, let me know where you're from and what you think. If there's one thing I've learned over the last couple of years, it's that men like their penis, and especially online. I've had to restrict all of my privacy settings on the different platforms so I can't receive inbound messages unless I follow you, because I got too many dick pics. And you know, like on dating apps, it's like instant. Yeah, I have a lot of dick pics. So, you know, it's interesting to see how much men love their penis. My thought pattern for the video is really kind of to talk about dysphoria, talk about autogynephilia, cross-dressing, pornography, sexuality, and ultimately transition. Autogynephilia might be a word that is unfamiliar to some people watching, and what that is a theory that was put forward by an academic out of Toronto, Dr. Blanchard, in 1989, that presented the transsexual as one of two things. And really, you know, because the trans experience can be boiled down to just two things, I suppose. But at any rate, the two ways that he describes it is: one, gay man who is attracted to straight men and so transitions in order to more easily attract a mate. And then number two is a gay man who is in love with himself and so transitions to, I suppose, fall in love with themselves or be turned on by themselves. It's autogynephilia, or AGP, is really an expression of thought that excludes trans men, non-binary people. And you know, when I look at my own experience of sexuality, even, you know, pre-transition I'd been with men, and post-transition I've been, you know, with men, with women, with non-binary people, and so, you know, I would never call myself a gay man, ever. But when you have the trans experience explained to the world by a cisgender male, of course it's going to center the cisgender male experience. Natalie Wynn, on her ContraPoints channel, did a great video on autogynephilia about a year and a half ago, and I'll post a link in the comments below. But ultimately, you know, the way she succinctly described it as kind of a flawed theory is that autogynephilia is where misogyny, where women are dismissed for being vain and narcissistic and in love with themselves, it's where misogyny meets homophobia, where gay men are just sexual perverts. And so, you know, A plus B equals AGP. And so I want to present that up front, that idea up front, not to really go into too much more detail about it. Like, there are better resources out there. People have ripped it apart with a lot more academic resources than I have access to. But just to detail, it was something that I became exposed to in the mid-2000s. And it was something that really held me back, because I could then dismiss myself as just being autogynephilic and not needing to transition at all. And when you're coping with dysphoria and that internal dissonance that exists in your head, you're really trying to just survive. And in the survival, for me at least, the coping was, I did it in 3 ways. I cross-dressed for sex with my partner a lot, because I really had a lot of bottom dysphoria and disliked my penis so much. I would just kind of float away during sex with multiple partners, from the time I was a teenager into my 30s, late 30s. I just would kind of not be there. And then the third way I did it was that I just, like I just said, rationalized and dismissed myself. It's nothing more than autogynephilic, and that was it. I was just turned on by myself, and as a woman, just like the paper said, and I was a pervert, not worthy of love. So I'm active on multiple social media platforms. I think there's about 7,000 people across 6 different platforms who follow me. And I've noticed an uptick in the number of cross-dressers who follow me lately. And, I won't follow a cross-dresser back. It's not my experience, and it's not something I really want to see. And this isn't to kink shame or anything. It's not where I'm at anymore. And I use cross-dressing really to get through. And I know a lot of cross-dressers out there are exploring their gender and sexuality. And, talking to friends or reading online, it seems like, at least for those of us who are older, cross-dressing is very much a common experience. And it's not like there's this universal experience. Like, we don't all need to have dysphoria. We don't all need to be cross-dressers in our past, but it does seem to be pretty common, at least in my circle. Some cross-dressers are eggs that haven't cracked yet, and others are, it's kink and, or paraphilia or whatever you want to call it. And they're getting off, and that's totally fine. Like, I certainly used cross-dressing sexually, 100%. Like, it would be part of my sex life in the bedroom. And I suppose at the time it was a kink, but ultimately what I've found since being on HRT for almost 3 years is, my libido is gone. But then also, with estrogen coming in and just living my life full time as myself, is that, they're just clothes, and that's just it. Clothes have no gender. And so what I guess the experience is that in cross-dressing, to cope, I would take the dress off, or, slip out of the skirt and go back to suit and tie. Whereas now, like, I'm on the bus in heels, I'm at the grocery store, at 10 o'clock at night, and I haven't done my makeup and I don't give a shit, and I just have my hair up, and, I'm getting some cream for my coffee or whatever. I'm going to work, with my kids at the park. I'm living my life. I'm at the bar getting picked up by a dude, or just having a drink. There's no taking my skin off. And, it was part of my sexuality, I suppose. But one of the best expressions I've ever heard is that sexuality is who you go to bed with, and gender is who you go to bed as. And I know, I'm being very simplistic, but sometimes it's just easier to be this simplistic. Sex was hard. It was always a chore. And it's not like I didn't enjoy giving my partner pleasure. I certainly very much wanted to give them pleasure and care for them and cherish them and all those things, but I was really just so held back. And when I looked at porn, or we would use porn, it did nothing for me. I just was not interested in porn ever. Even looking at trans porn, the different sites that were out there, didn't really do a lot for me. I never really saw myself reflected in that representation, whether it was, heterosexual, whether it was man on man, whether it was the trans girls. I didn't see myself at that time reflected back in the pornography. And I didn't really have a lot of sexual fantasies either. It was non-existent. So, you know, it was kind of some of the effects of dysphoria in my life, in my sex life. And yeah, sometime in the mid 2000s or early 2000s, I discovered this idea of autogynephilia. You know, just stumbling across it online, and like I had a beautiful life. You know, I had a spouse, I had kids, I had a job, and how, like, could I possibly transition? You know, I'd be the ugliest girl in the world. Who would ever want to love me? You know, all those real horrible questions we ask ourselves. And, you know, you can just tell from what I've described so far, you know, of my internal life, is that kind of the worst damage we do is the damage we do to ourselves as trans people. And, you know, I had struggled with gender identity my entire life, and really trying to manage through shame, and I've talked to it at length in other videos, and I won't get into too many details here. But what autogynephilia and Blanchard allowed me to do was just dismiss myself and dismiss the dysphoria, and just clamp it further down into the closet, and just like put that screw, tighten it every day, and just dismiss myself as not being worthy of being able to live a full, authentic life, being loved for who I am. It got to a point in my marriage where, like, I could acknowledge that I was trans with my partner, but it was always like this shame and this secret, and that was because I couldn't see past that cisgender worldview that I had been, you know, raised in, that compulsory heterosexual world of, you know, this is what you do, these are the steps you take. And I had a lot of privilege that I didn't want to give up. Ultimately, is what that boils down to. And I see that commonly in, you know, some of the cross-dressers who will comment, or they'll step into different subreddits and speak, and it just, it screams at me. It's like there's a privilege there that they're unwilling to abdicate a lot of times. And it took me to the point where it was survival. It was like either I was going to kill myself or transition, and that's what it was. The things that I thought were my kink were just coping mechanisms that just disappeared with hormone replacement therapy and estrogen running through my body, and ultimately just feeling more comfortable in my own skin. Like, I have breasts now, and I mean, it's cool, like, it is cool, but they don't turn me on. But what did turn me on, you know, was like when I was with this guy, and like he took my shirt off and took my bra off, and it was like, wow, that's so sexy. And like, that felt so nice to hear. Just to hear a partner be into me and my body in a way that I'd never had before. And so I'm in this situation, you know, in my mid 40s now, where I'm really rebuilding my understanding of sexuality. You know, what do I like? What turns me on? What am I attracted to? And it's even, you know, trying to understand it from a romantic perspective and from a sexual perspective. So, you know, like, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm a homo-romantic who's bisexual, or a heterosexual who's homo-romantic? I don't know. But it's interesting to like go through all these thoughts and explore and have fun and discover a whole new side of myself that just was stunted for most of my life. You know, thinking back to Blanchard and AGP and just trying to rebuild my sexuality, is that gender isn't sexuality. So at its core, you know, what does it mean to be trans? I mean, I've said it several times before, is like, cis people don't really ask themselves that question, but it's the realization, at least for me, that, you know, my gender didn't match my assigned sex at birth, and I had to do something to fix that. You know, it hasn't always been easy, but it's been amazing to live my life fully as myself, finally, to be loved as myself, finally, and to love as myself in a way that is full and giving and authentic. And yeah, so it hasn't always been easy, but things like AGP and Blanchard and the discussion around it is, those kind of things do make it harder, or have made it harder for me to get to this point, or maybe you're wrestling with a lot of these thoughts yourself, but it's been worth it for all those reasons I've listed. I love my life now. I love who I am. And I can finally say that I am worthy of being loved for who I am. So thanks for watching. If you found value in this, please like, subscribe, share. Comment down below. Let me know what your thoughts are, or perhaps some of these ideas have resonated with you. And as always, here's to life.